Then another, and another. 3 kitten cubs, no bigger than a closed fist, were sitting in front of her car's wheels. "Hey, little ones, I need to get to work," she said, gently trying to shoo them away with her foot. But the kittens, one striped, one black, and one white with caramel spots, didn't budge. Instead, they started meowing louder, as if protesting. Emily glanced at her watch. 7:15 a.m. She was already late for the meeting with the new client. But something about the kittens' behavior intrigued her. They didn't seem scared or lost, like street cats usually do. Their gazes were different, almost as if they were trying to communicate something. "Fine, you win," sighed Emily, crouching down to get a better look at them. The striped kitten immediately stood up and started walking, stopping a few meters ahead and turning back to her as if expecting to be followed. Defying all common sense and years of professional conditioning, Emily followed the kittens. They led her through the cars in the parking lot, then along the sidewalk of the complex, until they reached a side alley where the trash bins of the neighboring building were located. There, near a sewer grate, was a cardboard box soaked by the drizzle from the previous night. The meows coming from inside were so faint they could barely be heard. Emily approached with a heavy heart, already imagining what she would find. Inside the box, 4 even smaller kittens were huddled together, shivering from the cold. They were dirty, wet, and clearly starving. "How could anyone do this?" she murmured, feeling a mix of anger and compassion welling up in her chest. Without a second thought, Emily took off her blazer and used it to line an eco-friendly bag she always carried in her purse. Carefully, she transferred the 4 kittens from the box into the makeshift bag. The 3 kittens that had led her there watched intently, as if approving of her actions. "You too, come on," she called. And to her surprise, the 3 promptly followed her as she headed back to her apartment. Emily quickly sent a message to her boss, Deborah, inventing a family emergency. It wasn't exactly a lie, she thought, looking at the 7 little beings now depending on her. On that first day, Emily turned her bathroom into an improvised feline ICU. A rushed visit to the neighborhood pet shop resulted in special puppy milk, soft blankets, a litter box, and other essential items. The veterinarian, Dr. Paul, came for an emergency house call and was impressed by the condition of the kittens. "They're special, Emily," he commented as he examined the last kitten. "I've never seen cats so young display such coordinated behavior." The 3 older ones clearly acted to save the younger ones. Emily watched the kittens, now clean and fed, sleeping in a nest of blankets. The striped kitten, whom she had started calling Sherlock, opened one eye and stared at her with an unsettling intensity, as if understanding every word being said. "There's something different about these kittens," Dr. Paul continued, packing up his equipment. "Keep them close and observe. Something tells me they ended up in your life for a reason." As the veterinarian left, Emily wondered how 7 cats would fit into her small 2-bedroom apartment. More importantly, how would she explain it to the building manager, Mrs. Bernice, known for her dislike of pets? But seeing the little ones sleeping peacefully, she knew she would find a way. What Emily didn't imagine was that this impromptu rescue would be just the beginning of an extraordinary journey. The 7 kittens that fate placed in her path held secrets and abilities that would transform not only her life, but also that of the entire community around her. The following weeks brought a new routine to apartment 502. Emily completely rearranged her life to accommodate the 7 new residents, who were growing and developing in astonishing ways. Each kitten began to display unique personalities and, even more intriguingly, abilities that defied any logical explanation. Sherlock, the striped leader of the rescue, showed extraordinary intelligence. Emily caught him multiple times sitting in front of her laptop, eyes fixed on the screen as she worked from home, as if he were actually reading and understanding. More than once, he managed to open locked drawers where she kept feline treats, using techniques that seemed too calculated for a simple cat. Luna, the black kitten who was part of the rescuing trio, developed an impressive sensitivity to human emotions. When Emily came home stressed from work, Luna would appear with a different toy, as if she knew exactly what Emily needed to cheer up. Even more surprising was her ability to predict Emily's migraine attacks. Always positioning herself on her lap, Minutes before the pain began, the third of the original group, a mix of white and caramel named Houdini, lived up to his name with impressive escape skills. No closed door was an obstacle for him, and even the most secure compartments seemed to have their secrets revealed under his agile paws. As for the four smaller ones, rescued from the box, their quirks began to manifest in even more extraordinary ways. Popcorn, the smallest of all, a snow-white kitten, developed a voice that sounded more like a song. Her melodic meows often attracted birds to the apartment window, creating a morning spectacle that even delighted Mrs. Bernice, who now stopped in the hallway to listen. "You won't believe it," Emily commented during a routine visit from Dr. Paul, "but last night, I swear I saw Atlas," the largest of the kittens rescued from the box, a robust grey cat, balancing 3 toy balls on his nose while walking along the edge of the sofa. Like a circus performer. The veterinarian observed everything with a mix of fascination and scientific curiosity. "You know, Emily, there are historical accounts of cats with extraordinary abilities. In ancient Egypt, they were considered mystical beings, guardians of secrets and bearers of special gifts. But I must admit, I've never seen anything like this in all my years of practice." The other 2 kittens, Ziggy and Flash, a pair of tabby siblings, seemed to share a telepathic connection. They often moved in perfect synchrony, as if performing a rehearsed choreography. Emily caught them several times, talking through glances and subtle head movements, followed by coordinated actions that always resulted in something surprising. One afternoon, while working on an important advertising campaign, Emily noticed unusual activity in the living room. All 7 cats were sitting in a circle, as if holding a secret meeting. In the center, Sherlock appeared to be leading some kind of silent communication. When she approached, they quickly dispersed, but something in their eyes suggested it wasn't just a playful moment. "Sometimes I get the feeling they're planning something," Emily confided to her best friend Julia, over coffee. "It's like they have a mission, you know, something bigger than just being pets." Julia, who had always been skeptical, began to change her mind after witnessing some inexplicable events during her visits. "Just yesterday," she reported, "I saw Houdini open 3 doors in a row to get to you, when you locked yourself in the office crying after that argument with your boss. How did he know you needed comfort?" What no one knew was that the extraordinary abilities of the 7 cats were just beginning to manifest. Soon, their unique gifts would be crucial in unraveling a mystery that affected the entire neighborhood, and Emily would find herself at the center of an adventure she never imagined she'd experience. As the sun set that Sunday evening, Emily watched her feline companions through the apartment window. Sherlock was sitting on the windowsill, his gaze fixed on something in the street below, while the other 6 positioned themselves strategically around the apartment. Like silent sentinels, something was about to happen, and this time it would be bigger than anything she could have imagined. The discovery began on a Saturday morning when Emily found an old flyer under the couch, brought in by Atlas. The yellowed poster announced the Great Circus of Wonders, which had settled in the neighborhood decades ago. The most intriguing part was a faded photo showing felines performing impossible acrobatics, with a caption mentioning, "The Magical Cats of Madame Zara." "This is very strange," murmured Emily, noticing how her 7 cats had gathered around her, all focused on the flyer with unusual intensity. Sherlock, in particular, seemed to study the image with an almost human-like interest. Driven by curiosity and her cat's behavior, Emily began researching the circus. She discovered that it had mysteriously shut down in the 90s, leaving behind an abandoned lot on the outskirts of the neighborhood. Even more intriguing were the accounts from long-time residents about the extraordinary acts performed by the circus cats. "Those cats did impossible things," recounted Mr. Joachim, an elderly neighbor who had frequented the circus in his youth. "It wasn't a trick or an illusion. They had something special, something Madame Zara said was an ancestral gift." That same afternoon, as Emily organized her findings, she noticed her cats acting even more peculiar. Luna began scratching insistently at the apartment door, while Houdini had already managed to unlock it. The other 5 lined up as if waiting to leave. "You want to show me something, don't you?" asked Emily, realizing it wasn't a coincidence that the flyer had appeared just now. Following her feline guides, Emily found herself walking through quieter streets of the neighborhood until they reached the lot of the old circus. The place was fenced off with ivy-covered barriers, but there was a small opening through which the cat skillfully slipped. What she found on the other side seemed like something out of a decaying fairy tale. The torn circus tent was still partially standing, held up by rusted poles. Abandoned equipment sprawled across the grounds, casting eerie shadows in the fading light of dusk. Surprisingly, Atlas climbed onto an old platform and began performing acrobatic moves that seemed straight out of the brochure photos. Popcorn, in turn, emitted a series of melodies that caused the local pigeons to form a circle in the air, as if dancing. This can't be a coincidence, thought Emily, watching Ziggy and Flash execute a series of synchronized jumps among the abandoned equipment. It was as if they had an innate knowledge of that place, of that art. Amid the rubble, Sherlock guided Emily to a small structure that served as a dressing room. Inside the dusty interior, they found an old trunk. When Luna approached, her whiskers trembled in a peculiar way, and the trunk's lock opened on its own. Inside was a diary belonging to Madame Zara. The yellowed pages revealed secrets about a special lineage of cats, descendants of sacred felines from ancient Egypt, endowed with extraordinary abilities. According to the writings, these cats appeared at crucial moments in history, always with an important mission to fulfill. "The guardians will return when they are most needed," read one of the last entries in the diary. "They will find the chosen human guardian, and together they will prevent history from repeating itself." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as Sherlock placed his paw on that specific passage. The 7 cats now stared at her with a gaze that seemed to carry the weight of centuries of history and purpose. A sudden noise startled them. In the distance, voices were approaching the abandoned grounds. Emily quickly tucked the diary into her bag, and the cats took up strategic positions around her. Through a crack in the dressing room wall, she saw 3 men in suits inspecting the area with commercial interest. "The site is perfect," said one of them, consulting a clipboard. "We'll demolish everything next week and start construction on the new development." Emily felt her heart tighten. It wasn't just an abandoned lot at stake. It was a historic, possibly mystical place, and her cats seemed to know that better than anyone. The look she exchanged with Sherlock at that moment made it clear they needed to act, and fast. The next morning, Emily woke up to her 7 cats arranged in a perfect circle around Madame Zara's diary, which she had left on the coffee table. Sherlock, with his usual sharpness, was using his paw to try to flip through the pages, while the others watched intently. "We need to understand this story better," murmured Emily, pouring herself coffee as she flipped through the diary. The notes revealed fascinating details about the special lineage of the felines. According to Madame Zara, these cats had an ancestral connection to Egyptian temples, where they were guardians of sacred knowledge and protectors of natural balance. As she read, Emily noticed something curious. Small watermarks appeared on certain pages when the light hit them at a specific angle. Luna, noticing her discovery, jumped onto the table and began to purr at a different frequency than usual. To Emily's astonishment, the watermarks began to glow softly. "It's some kind of map," she exclaimed, arranging the pages side by side. The watermarks formed an intricate drawing of the neighborhood, with the circus site at the center and various points connected by faint lines. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It was Julia, her best friend, who was also a historian and worked at the city's public archive. "Emily, you won't believe what I found," she said, rushing into the apartment. "I've been researching about the circus and—" Julia stopped abruptly upon seeing the cats gathered around the diary. For a moment, she had the impression that they quickly shifted positions, as if trying to hide something. "I found old records that mention a network of underground tunnels connecting important points in the neighborhood," she continued, spreading some old photos on the table. "And look, the circus was built right over one of the main access points." Emily and Julia spent the next few hours cross-referencing information. The watermarks in the diary matched perfectly with the tunnel map. Even more intriguing were Madame Zara's notes about power points, locations where, according to her, The mystical energy of felines manifested most intensely. Here, Julia pointed to an old photo, there was an antique shop famous for its Egyptian artifacts. And here, a library with a rare collection on occultism. All these places are connected by the tunnels. As the friends talked, the cats began to exhibit increasingly peculiar behavior. Atlas and Houdini disappeared for a few minutes, returning with ancient objects Emily had never seen in her apartment. A small cat statue that looked Egyptian, a medallion with strange inscriptions, and a piece of parchment. Where did all this come from? Julia asked, examining the objects with wide eyes. Popcorn began to hum her characteristic melody, and this time, something extraordinary happened. The medallion started to vibrate in harmony with her song. The inscriptions glowed softly, revealing words in an ancient language. "This is Coptic," Julia exclaimed. Having studied ancient languages in college, it's a dialect used in ancient Egypt. Here it says something about guardians of the portal and cycle of renewal. At that moment, Ziggy and Flash began a synchronized dance around the objects, while Sherlock positioned himself at the center, his eyes fixed on a specific point on the map formed by the watermarks. "Emily," Julia said with a trembling voice, "I think your cats aren't just ordinary cats. They seem to know exactly what they're doing, as if they're trying to show us something bigger." A sudden clap of thunder made the two friends jump. A storm was brewing outside, and through the window, they could see the circus grounds in the distance. For a moment, Emily swore she saw a golden glow emanating from the ruins. Luna approached Emily, carrying a loose page from the diary they had overlooked in her mouth. On it, a prophecy written by Madame Zara spoke of a crucial moment when the feline guardians would need to prevent a great change that threatened the mystical balance of the place. "The demolition," whispered Emily, "isn't just about destroying an abandoned lot. They're about to interfere with something much older and more powerful." The 7 cats gathered again in a circle, this time including Emily and Julia in their formation. The air seemed charged with electricity, and it wasn't just because of the approaching storm. Something was about to happen, something that would forever change their understanding of the world and the true role of those extraordinary felines in their lives. The storm brewing outside seemed to amplify the mysterious energy filling the apartment. Emily and Julia continued examining the objects brought by the cats when Sherlock began insistently scratching a loose floorboard near the bookshelf. "I never noticed that floorboard before," Emily commented, moving closer. With the help of Houdini, who was already demonstrating his lockpicking skills, they managed to remove the wood, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a metal box adorned with hieroglyphs and feline symbols. Atlas immediately positioned himself next to the box, performing a series of precise movements with his paws, as if deciphering a code. To the surprise of the two friends, the lid opened with a soft click. "This is incredible," exclaimed Julia, carefully removing the items from inside the box. There were old photographs of the circus in its glory days, yellowed documents, and, most intriguingly, a necklace with a scarab-shaped pendant. "Look at this," said Emily, picking up one of the photos. In it, Madame Zara appeared surrounded by cats that bore a striking resemblance to her current 7 companions. "This can't be a coincidence." Popcorn approached the necklace and began her characteristic melody. The scarab pendant reacted, emitting a greenish glow that projected symbols onto the apartment walls. Luna, with her special sensitivity, began reacting to the projections, her eyes reflecting the ancient inscriptions. "These are coordinates," Julia realized, quickly jotting down the symbols. "And look, they match exactly the points marked on the tunnel map." Meanwhile, Ziggy and Flash performed a synchronized dance around the box, their movements seemingly activating something in the ancient metal. A secret compartment opened at the base, revealing a small papyrus protected by a glass capsule. "It's some kind of prophecy," Julia translated, her eyes scanning the ancient text. "It talks about a cycle that completes every 100 years, when the feline guardians must renew the protection of the mystical portals. If this doesn't happen..." A particularly loud thunderclap interrupted her reading, causing the apartment lights to flicker. When the power stabilized, the 7 cats were positioned in formation, like sentinels guarding something invisible. "Emily," Julia called, her voice trembling slightly. "According to these documents, the last renewal cycle happened exactly when the circus closed. And now it's been 100 years, Emily concluded, understanding the gravity of the situation. That's why they found me. That's why we need to stop the demolition of the land. At that moment, Sherlock leaped onto the windowsill, catching everyone's attention. Outside, despite the rain that had started to fall, movement could be seen on the circus grounds. Construction machinery was already being positioned, preparing to begin the demolition earlier than planned. "We need to act now," declared Emily, feeling a determination she had never experienced before. The cats seemed to agree, each showcasing their unique abilities as if preparing for a mission. Atlas began performing complex acrobatic movements, as if warming up. Houdini inspected every lock in the apartment, practicing his unlocking techniques. Popcorn fine-tuned his melodious voice, while Luna seemed to meditate, tuning into the energies around her. "But how are we going to stop a demolition?" Julia asked, concerned. "We don't have confidence of the historical importance of the site, let alone its mystical significance." In response, Ziggy and Flash began playing with the beam of light coming through the window, their movements creating patterns that reflected on the scarab pendant. Suddenly, the necklace began to pulse with a more intense light, and a three-dimensional map of the tunnels projected into the air. "I think our feline friends have a plan," Emily smiled, observing how each cat took a strategic position around the holographic map. "And something tells me it's going to involve much more than just historical documents." The rain now fell heavily, creating a curtain of water that separated the apartment from the outside world. Inside, 7 extraordinary cats and 2 determined women were preparing for an adventure that would blend the mystical with the real, the past with the present, in a race against time to preserve something far greater than a simple abandoned lot. The rain battered Chicago when Emily, Julia, and the 7 cats left the apartment. Equipped with backpacks containing the diary, the artifacts they had found, and basic exploration gear, they followed Sherlock, who led the group with unwavering determination. "Are you sure we should do this in the middle of this storm?" asked Julia, shielding the ancient documents in a waterproof folder. In response, a lightning bolt split the sky, momentarily illuminating the circus grounds where the machinery awaited the start of the work. Luna, always sensitive to energies, began to behave peculiarly, her whiskers trembling in sync with the thunder. She guided the group to an old, seemingly abandoned newsstand located just a few meters from the circus grounds. "Wait," whispered Emily, watching Atlas perform a series of precise movements near the base of the newsstand. A metallic click echoed, and a small door revealed itself, camouflaged among the worn planks. "It's one of the tunnel entrances," exclaimed Julia, consulting the map they had discovered. "But how are we going to—" Before she could finish the sentence, Houdini had already stepped forward, his paws skillfully working on the ancient lock. Within seconds, the door creaked open. The interior revealed a spiral staircase descending into darkness. Popcorn, surprisingly, began to emit a melodious sound that caused ancient crystals embedded in the tunnel walls to emit a soft glow, illuminating the path. "This is incredible," murmured Julia, documenting everything with her phone. "These crystals must have piezoelectric properties, reacting to sound vibrations." As they descended, Ziggy and Flash performed a synchronized dance a few steps ahead, their movements seemingly activating hidden mechanisms that opened passages and revealed safe paths. Their knowledge of that place was impressive, as if they carried ancestral memories in their genes. After several minutes of descent, the group arrived at a stunning circular chamber. 7 pillars adorned with hieroglyphs surrounded a central circle where an intricate mosaic depicted cats in positions similar to those often assumed by Emily's companions. "Look at this," called Julia, approaching one of the walls. "These are historical records. They talk about how the guardian cats protected the city over the centuries, maintaining the balance between the physical and mystical worlds." Sherlock positioned himself at the center of the mosaic and let out a deep meow, unlike any sound they had ever heard from him. The other 6 cats immediately took specific positions around the circle. "Emily," called Julia, her voice trembling with excitement, "according to these inscriptions, There is a renewal ritual that must be performed before the sun sets today. If not, a tremor interrupted her speech. Above them, the demolition machines had begun their work. Dust and small fragments started falling from the tunnel's ceiling. "We need to do something," exclaimed Emily, feeling panic rise. But the cats remained calm, each in their position, as if waiting for something. Luna began emitting a peculiar vibration, which was amplified by the crystals on the walls. Popcorn joined in with her melodious voice, creating a supernatural harmony. Atlas started a series of acrobatic movements that seemed to draw symbols in the air, while Houdini manipulated invisible mechanisms around the pillars. Ziggy and Flash, in their synchronized dance, began generating a pattern of light that reflected off the crystals, creating a mesmerizing spectacle. In the center, Sherlock remained motionless, his eyes glowing with a supernatural intensity. The scarab pendant that Emily carried began to pulse in sync with the movements of the cats. The inscriptions on the walls came to life, glowing with their own light that grew brighter with each passing second. "It's now," shouted Julia, quickly translating the symbols that were forming. "The renewal ritual has begun, but we need—" Another tremor, stronger this time, shook the chamber. Time was running out. And the fate of something far greater than a simple abandoned lot rested in the hands and paws of this unlikely group of guardians. The ritual reached its peak as the 7 cats, in perfect synchrony, began to emanate a golden light. Emily and Julia watched, wide-eyed, as the air in the chamber grew denser with mystical energy. "It's exactly as described in Madame Zara's diary," exclaimed Julia, frantically flipping through the ancient pages. "The awakening of the Guardians happens when the 7 unite in a moment of extreme need." Above them, the noise of the demolition machines grew more menacing. Larger pieces of the ceiling began to fall, but an invisible force, generated by the ritual boundary, prevented them from hitting the group. Sherlock, down at the center of the circle, began to shine more intensely than the others. His eyes, now completely golden, seemed to hold all the wisdom of the ancient Egyptian temples. When he meowed, his voice resonated with a supernatural authority, and Emily, surprisingly, was able to understand "human guardian." The voice echoed in her mind. "The time has come to unite the 2 worlds. Place the pendant at the center of the mosaic." With trembling hands, Emily stepped forward to the center of the circle. The scarab pendant pulsed stronger and stronger, as if it had a life of its own. When she placed it in the designated spot, a beam of golden light shot toward the ceiling. Luna began emanating waves of energy that calmed the vibrations of the machines above. Popcorn chanted an ancient melody, its crystalline notes strengthening the tunnel's structures. Atlas executed precise movements that seemed to weave a protective energy net around the chamber. Houdini, with his mastery of unlocking, began activating hidden mechanisms in the pillars, causing ancient symbols to light up in sequence. Ziggy and Flash, in their synchronized dance, generated light patterns that intertwined with the ritual's energy. Emily, "Look," called Julia, pointing to the walls. The inscriptions were beginning to change, updating as if they were being rewritten before their eyes. History is renewing itself. The cycle is completing. A particularly strong tremor shook the chamber, but this time it was different. It didn't come from the machines above, but from the very foundations of the place. The mosaic on the floor began to glow with increasing intensity, revealing lines of force that extended far beyond that room. "They're the ley lines," exclaimed Julia, her voice mixing academic excitement with mystical awe. "The city's power points are all connected through this place." The 7 cats now floated slightly above the ground, their forms enveloped in golden auras. Through their glowing eyes, Emily could see flashes of ancient memories, Egyptian temples, secret rituals, generations of feline guardians fulfilling their sacred duty to protect the balance of the world. The scarab pendant began to spin in the air, faster and faster, creating a vortex of energy that expanded throughout the chamber. The walls trembled, but not with destruction. It was as if the place itself was awakening from a long slumber. "The portal is opening," Julia warned, quickly translating the new symbols that appeared. "We need to—" Her sentence was cut off by a blinding flash. When the light faded, Emily and Julia saw that the chamber had transformed. The pillars now glowed with their own light, and the air was charged with an ancient and powerful energy. Sherlock, still at the center of the circle, began to communicate again. The first step is complete, but our mission has only just begun. The mystical portals have been renewed, but we must ensure their permanent protection. The noise of the machines above had completely ceased, as if time had stopped in the outside world. Emily looked at her feline companions, each of them now emanating an aura of power and wisdom that went far beyond their physical appearances. "What happens now?" she asked, feeling as though she was on the threshold of something much greater than she had ever imagined. The answer came not in words, but in a series of images that formed in the air around them, showing other locations in the city where ancient secrets awaited discovery. The adventure was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The silence that followed the ritual was broken by a distant sound, like the tolling of underground bells. The walls of the chamber still shimmered with mystical energy as Sherlock gently descended to the ground, his golden eyes gradually returning to normal. "We need to move quickly," Emily translated, instinctively understanding the message her feline guardian was conveying. The ritual created a temporal pause, but it won't last long. Julia, who had been documenting everything on her phone, noticed something extraordinary in the recordings. "Emily, look at this. The images show some kind of energy map of the city, like a web of light connecting different points." The 7 cats rearranged themselves into a new formation, with Luna leading this time. Their whiskers trembled in sync with the energies of the place, guiding the group through a side corridor that hadn't been visible before the ritual. "According to these inscriptions," said Julia, illuminating the walls with her phone's flashlight, "there are 7 sacred points scattered throughout the city. The circus was just one of them. Each point corresponds to one of the guardians." Atlas gracefully leaped onto a ledge on the wall, revealing an ancient panel. His precise movements activated a mechanism that caused the panel to rotate, exposing a map carved into the stone. "This is incredible," exclaimed Emily, recognizing familiar city landmarks among the mystical symbols. "Look, here's the century-old library downtown, the botanical garden, the old train station." Popcorn began to sing softly, making crystals embedded in the map glow in sequence, as if marking a path. Houdini, meanwhile, quickly worked on a series of ancient locks arranged around the map, each click revealing more details of the design. "The points form a 7-pointed star," observed Julia, scribbling quickly in her notebook. "And each point has a specific energy that—" A sudden tremor interrupted her analysis. Above them, the effect of the time pause began to dissipate. Ziggy and Flash immediately started their synchronized dance, generating a protective field around the group. "We have to act before the machines start working again," said Emily, feeling the urgency of the moment. "But how can we protect all these places at the same time?" In response, Sherlock approached the map and touched each of the glowing points with his paw. With every touch, an image formed in the air, showing the place at its moment of greatest power: the library, when it was a center of mystical knowledge; the botanical garden as a sanctuary of ancestral healing; the train station as a portal between dimensions. "That's it," exclaimed Julia, her eyes shining with understanding. "We don't need to protect all the places physically. The ritual at the circus reactivated the energy network. Now we need to awaken the memory of each place," Emily finished, finally understanding the Guardian's plan. "Make people remember why these places are special." Luna let out a purr of approval, and her eyes began to glow with a silvery light. Through her, Emily and Julia could see flashes of the past: people performing healing rituals in the botanical garden, scholars deciphering sacred texts in the library, travelers crossing mystical portals at the train station. "The places still have power," Sherlock communicated telepathically. "They just need to be rediscovered, and for that, we need to tell their stories," Emily concluded, feeling a new determination growing within her. "Make people see beyond appearances." The map on the wall began to pulse with a brighter light, and the 7 cats took specific positions around it. It was as if each of them was connected to one of the sacred points, channeling and directing the ancient energies. Time is returning to normal, Julia warned, noticing that the sounds of the machines above were gradually returning. What do we do now? Emily looked at her feline companions, each of them emanating an aura of wisdom and ancestral power. The mission was clear. They needed to awaken the city to its true nature, a place where the mystical and the mundane intertwined in an eternal dance. The challenge would be immense, but something in Sherlock's gaze gave her certainty that they were not alone on this journey. Somewhere in the city, other guardians awaited their call, ready to help reconnect the present with a past filled with magic and mystery. The return to the surface was like emerging from a dream. Emily, Julia, and the 7 cats found the city transformed. Not physically, but in their newly awakened eyes attuned to the mystical. The energy lines that were once invisible now shimmered subtly, connecting the sacred points in a golden web. "It's incredible how we never noticed this before," murmured Julia, watching as people hurried by, oblivious to the magic pulsing beneath their feet. The demolition machines stood still, their operators puzzled by a series of inexplicable technical failures. Sherlock led the group to the century-old library, the first point to be awakened. The imposing neoclassical building, which many considered just another deteriorating historic structure, now revealed its secrets to the trained eyes of the guardians. Luna, with her heightened sensitivity, immediately detected traces of ancient energy in the dusty shelves. Popcorn began to sing softly, causing the hidden crystals in the ceiling moldings to glow in response. "Look at this," called Emily, noticing how Atlas performed a series of precise movements near a seemingly ordinary shelf. A soft click revealed a secret passage, leading to a hidden room filled with ancient texts. "These are records of the first guardians," explained Julia, carefully examining the documents. "Are stories of the city that were never told, or were deliberately forgotten." Houdini worked quickly on the old locks, revealing more hidden compartments. Ziggy and Flash, in their synchronized dance, activated hidden symbols in the marble floor, gradually amplifying the energy of the place. "We need to make people remember," Sherlock transmitted telepathically. "Not through grand revelations, but by awakening the ancestral memory that everyone carries." Emily understood the plan. Using her skills in advertising, she began to formulate a subtle yet effective campaign. Julia, with her historical knowledge, would provide the necessary academic foundation to lend credibility to the movement. "We can start with small exhibitions," suggested Emily. "Tell the stories of these places in a way that sparks people's curiosity. Make them want to discover more." The cats approved the plan, each contributing their unique skills. Luna would sensitize people to the energies of the places. Popcorn would use his music to awaken dormant memories. Atlas would demonstrate the connection between movement and mystical power. Houdini would take charge of revealing long-hidden secrets, while Ziggy and Flash would create performances that captured the public's imagination. Sherlock, as always, would be the guardian of ancient wisdom, guiding everyone on the path to awakening. As the sun set, casting golden shadows over the city, the group prepared for their greatest mission. It wouldn't be a battle with spectacular confrontations, but a gradual and profound transformation. "Look," Julia pointed to the library window. People passing by on the street began to stop, looking at the building as if seeing it for the first time. Some entered, drawn by a force they didn't fully understand. Emily smiled, watching her feline companions take up strategic positions throughout the library. The magic was awakening, not like in fairy tales with bursts of light and sound, but subtly, like the dawn that turns night into day so gradually that the change is barely noticed. "This is just the beginning," Sherlock conveyed, his eyes gleaming with ancient wisdom. "The city is ready to awaken, and we will be its guardians, protecting the balance between the mystical and the mundane, between the past and the present." The scarab pendant pulsed softly around Emily's neck, in sync with the rhythm of her heartbeat and the pulse of the city. The real adventure was only beginning, and each new day would bring extraordinary discoveries for those who had the eyes to see and the courage to believe. Night fell over Chicago, but for the first time in a long while, it wasn't just darkness that enveloped the city. It was magic, ancient and new, waiting to be rediscovered by all those who dared to look beyond the veil of the everyday. The The sun rose over a different Chicago that morning. For most people, it was just another day. But for Emily, Julia, and their 7 feline guardians, every ray of light revealed the golden web of mystical energy that now pulsed visibly through the city. News of the inexplicable halt to the demolition of the old circus went viral on social media. Mysterious photos began circulating, showing strange patterns of light around the city's sacred sites. The hashtag Mysteries Chai became a trending topic. "It's working better than we expected," Julia commented, showing Emily the hundreds of posts about the century-old library. People were sharing strange experiences, inexplicable sensations, sudden memories of past lives, encounters with extraordinarily intelligent cats. Sherlock, sitting majestically on Emily's desk, watched the monitor with satisfaction. The plan was in motion. Luna roamed the city, her subtle presence awakening people's sensitivity to the ancient energies. Popcorn appeared at small cultural events, her music striking long-forgotten chords in the souls of her listeners. Atlas had become a sensation on Instagram, his impossible acrobatics at the city's historic landmarks attracting thousands of followers. Houdini kept uncovering secret passages, gradually revealing the mysteries hidden beneath the urban surface. Ziggy and Flash had transformed into street artists, their synchronized performances mesmerizing crowds and awakening ancestral memories in the city's collective unconscious. "Look at this," called Emily, showing an email she had just received. It was from the Historical Heritage Department, announcing a preservation and restoration project for the 7 sacred sites, now recognized as places of exceptional cultural importance. The scarab pendant glowed intensely, and through it, Emily saw flashes of the future, the library transformed into a center for contemporary mystical studies, the botanical garden revealing its ancient healing secrets, the train station reconnected with its origins as a dimensional portal. "Did we make it?" she asked Sherlock, who responded with a deep, wise gaze. "No. Guardian Sash," he transmitted telepathically. "We have only just begun. The awakening is an ongoing process. Each generation will have its own challenges and discoveries." Julia, who had finished organizing the ancient documents they had found, presented her latest discovery. "There are other guardians in other cities. Chicago is just one node in a worldwide network of PowerPoints." The 7 cats gathered in a circle, their golden auras merging into a single light. Through their connection, Emily and Julia saw the true extent of their mission, not just to preserve the past, but to build bridges to a future where the mystical and the mundane coexist in harmony. "And now?" asked Emily, feeling the weight and honor of her responsibility as a guardian. The answer came not just from Sherlock, but from all 7 feline guardians, their voices united in her mind. "Now we tell our story, to inspire others to awaken, to see beyond the veil, to reconnect with the magic that has always been here." The sun reached its zenith over the city, and for a moment, everyone could see Chicago as it truly was. Not just a metropolis of concrete and steel, but a living being, pulsating with mystical energy, guarding secrets and infinite possibilities on every corner, in every shadow, in every ray of light. Emily's office on the top floor of the newly restored Empire State Building offered a privileged view of the 7 sacred points of Chicago. 5 years had passed since the initial awakening, and the city had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Guardians Foundation, officially an organization dedicated to the preservation of historical and cultural heritage, had become one of the main centers of influence in the city. Emily, now its executive director, skillfully balanced her public role as a cultural restorer with her secret role as a guardian of the mystical points. "Another school group arriving for the guided tour," announced Julia, now the chief curator of the Foundation's historical collection. On her desk, Luna rested elegantly, her silver fur betraying the passage of time, but her eyes retaining the same supernatural glow. Sherlock, who didn't seem to have aged a single day, watched from his favorite armchair as a group of children entered the main lobby. His golden eyes sparkled as he noticed something special in one of the girls, a little one about 7 years old, whose eyes immediately locked onto his with an instinctive recognition. "We have a new sensitive," he telepathically communicated to Emily, who smiled in understanding. Each year, more people, especially children, began to awaken to the mystical reality of the city. The old circus, now transformed into the Zara Cultural Center, had become the beating heart of the mystical awakening in Chicago. Atlas coordinated a school of experimental acrobatics that secretly trained new physical guardians. Popcorn led the music conservatory, where her ancestral melodies awakened dormant talents in young musicians. "Look at this," called Julia, showing a notification on her tablet. The latest live broadcast from Ziggy and Flash had reached 500,000 views. Their performances, now part of an international art project, connected PowerPoints in different cities around the world. Houdini, the expert in secrets, had discovered a new network of tunnels linking the sacred points to still unexplored locations in the city. Each discovery brought more pieces to the mystical puzzle that was Chicago. "Emily," called a young voice. It was Anna Claire, the first human apprentice officially accepted by the Council of Feline Guardians. At 16, she already showed extraordinary talent for sensing the city's energy lines. "We found something in the archives of the Centennial Library." The document she carried made Emily hold her breath. It was an ancient map, far more detailed than any they had found before, showing not just the 7 main points, but dozens of smaller ones scattered across the city. "They're secondary nodes," explained Sherlock, stepping closer to the map. "Amplification points that can expand the mystical protection network to the entire metropolitan area." The scarab pendant, which Emily never took off, began to pulse with a new intensity. Through it, she saw flashes of possibilities, a Chicago fully awakened to its mystical nature, where the extraordinary and the everyday danced in perfect balance. But with that vision came a warning. Other forces had noticed the city's awakening. Not all of them were benevolent. A new phase of the Guardians' mission was about to begin, and this time they would need all the help they could get. "Gather the council," ordered Sherlock, his mental voice carrying an urgency Emily hadn't heard since the early days. "It's time to expand the circle of Guardians." The sun began to set over the city, painting the skyscrapers in shades of gold and purple. At the 7 sacred points, the ancient crystals pulsed in unison, as if responding to a silent call. A new adventure was about to begin, and this time the Guardians were not alone. The little girl from the school group glanced at Sherlock one last time before leaving, her eyes glowing with the same supernatural gold that marked the feline Guardians. The future was arriving faster than they had anticipated, and it brought with it both promises and challenges. The Council of Guardians gathered in the circular room at the top of the century-old library, a space that revealed itself only to those who could see beyond the veil of the ordinary. Around the ancient oak table, Emily observed the extraordinary mix of humans and felines that now formed the front line of mystical protection for Chicago. Anna Claire, the young apprentice, sat between Sherlock and Luna, her black hair now streaked with a silver lock, a mark of the full awakening of her powers. Beside her, 5 other children and teenagers, each personally chosen by the Guardian Cats, represented the new generation of protectors. "The signs are clear," began Julia, projecting images from various points across the city. "The energy lines are intensifying in a way we haven't seen since the first awakening, and it's not just in Chicago." Popcorn, who had recently returned from an international tour with his experimental orchestra, emitted a series of melodic notes that formed an energy map in the air. Points of light glowed in different cities around the world, connected by golden lines of power. "Los Angeles, Miami, Mexico City, Lisbon," listed Emily, recognizing the locations. "All the ancient points are awakening simultaneously. And with them, ancient forces are also awakening," transmitted Sherlock, his mental voice carrying a tone of concern. Atlas, who maintained constant vigilance over the city's power points, projected disturbing images through his eyes, shadows moving against the natural flow of energy, presences that drained the life force from sacred places. "The Devourers," explained Luna, using her sensitivity to identify the presences. "Entities that feed on mystical energy. They remained dormant while the power points were weak. But now..." Houdini suddenly appeared through a secret passage, bringing with him an ancient scroll he had found during his explorations. Ziggy and Flashwise, who accompanied him, immediately began a ritual dance that allowed everyone to understand the ancient writing. "It's a prophecy," translated Anna Claire, her eyes glowing with mystical power. "It speaks of a moment of convergence, when the barriers between dimensions would become thinner, a moment of great power, but also of great vulnerability." "The Festival of Lights," murmured Emily, recalling the ongoing preparations in the city, an event that, officially, would celebrate the historical heritage of Chicago, but that secretly marked a ritual to strengthen the power points. "We need to prepare the new Guardians," declared Sherlock. "The festival will take place in 3 moons, and by then, each of the chosen ones must fully awaken their gifts." Emily observed the young apprentices. Besides Anna Claire, there was Michael, a 12-year-old boy with a natural talent for seeing energy lines; Yara, a 15-year-old girl who could communicate with cats as easily as the ancient Egyptians; the 13-year-old twins Peter and Paula, who together could create protective energy fields; and Sophia, the 7-year-old they had found that morning, whose potential was still a mystery. "How will we train them in time?" asked Julia, concerned about the tight deadline. In response, the 7 guardian cats positioned themselves in a circle, their bodies emanating a golden light that filled the room. Through their shared connection, Emily saw the plan take shape. Each cat would be responsible for one aspect of the training, transmitting ancestral knowledge through methods that transcended traditional teaching. "Time is short," conveyed Sherlock, "but their potential is immense, and they have something no previous generation had. They were born in a time of awakening, their gifts already naturally attuned to the energy of the city." The sun began to set over Chicago, its last rays reflecting off the crystals that adorned the council room. Outside, the city pulsed with life and energy, unaware of the mystical drama unfolding within its depths. But in the eyes of the young apprentices, Emily saw the same determination that had moved her 5 years ago, when it all began. The new generation of Guardians was ready to take their place in the mystical history of Chicago, and this time, the fate of much more than a city was at stake. 2 weeks before the Festival of Lights, Chicago buzzed with an energy never seen before. The public preparations blended with secret rituals as the new Guardians completed their intensive training under the guidance of the mystical cats. On the rooftop of the Empire State Building, transformed into a training area, Anna Claire guided Sophia through an exercise in energy perception. The young girl had proven to be a prodigy, capable of not only seeing energy lines but also influencing them with a touch. "Impressive," remarked Emily, watching as the girl, under Luna's watchful supervision, created small vortices of golden energy between her hands. "She learns faster than all of us." Sherlock, who oversaw the general training, displayed a rare sense of satisfaction. The twins, Peter and Paula, had mastered the art of creating mystical barriers, their complementary skills forming nearly impenetrable protections. Michael was developing his ability to track disturbances in the city's energy lines, while Yara honed her communication with the guardian cats. "They're ready," Sherlock conveyed to Emily, "but the real challenge is yet to come." Julia hurriedly entered the rooftop, carrying new documents discovered by Houdini during his explorations. "We've found more information about the Devourers," she announced, spreading ancient scrolls across a table. "They're not simply entities that feed on mystical energy. They're corrupted guardians from previous cycles." The revelation cast a heavy silence over the room. Atlas, who was conducting his daily patrol of the power points, returned with troubling news. The dark presences were multiplying, drawn by the city's growing energy. Pipoca, seated near one of the amplification crystals, began to chant an ancient melody that made the energy lines visible to everyone present. The living map clearly showed the infiltration points where the shadows were attempting to penetrate the city's mystical web. "The festival isn't just a celebration," Emily explained to the young Guardians. "It's a renewal ritual that happens every century. If the Devourers manage to corrupt the energy during the ritual, they could turn the entire power network into a channel for their own forces." Anna Claire finished, understanding the gravity of the situation. Ziggy and Flash, who had spent the last few days preparing a special performance for the festival, demonstrated through their synchronized dance how the energies should flow during the ritual. Their hypnotic movements created patterns of light that revealed the protection plan. "Each of you will have a crucial role," Sherlock conveyed to the young ones. "Sophia and Anna Claire will channel the main energy. The twins will maintain the protective barriers. Michael will track any infiltration attempts, while Yara will coordinate our communication with the feline guardians." Emily watched her protégés with a mix of pride and concern. In just a few weeks, they had transformed from ordinary children into powerful guardians. But would they be enough to face a force that had corrupted their predecessors? The scarab pendant around her neck pulsed, transmitting a vision of the near future. The Zara Cultural Center, illuminated by thousands of lights. Crowds unaware of the mystical drama unfolding amidst the celebrations. The 7 power points shining in unison as ancient forces vied for control of the city's energy grid. "There's something more," Julia revealed a final discovery. "The ritual won't just affect Chicago. With the simultaneous awakening of global power points, what happens here will ripple through all connected cities." The guardian cats gathered in a circle, their auras merging into a single golden light. Through their shared connection, everyone could see the true extent of their mission. They weren't just protecting one city, but potentially determining the future of the mystical balance on a global scale. That's why the Devourers chose this moment to act, Emily realized. It's their chance to corrupt the entire network at once. The sun set over Chicago, painting the sky with surreal colors that seemed to reflect the mystical tension in the air. On the rooftop of the Empire State Building, young and veteran guardians, both human and feline, prepared for what could be the most important battle of their lives. The countdown to the Festival of Lights had begun, and with it, the prelude to a confrontation that would determine the fate not only of a city, but of an entire mystical legacy dating back to the time of the pharaohs.